Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to talk about the adrenal gland or suprarenal gland. As you can see in the picture that it lies on the superior pole of the kidneys as they are paired organs, and the shape of it is either in the semilunar shape, or you would say the pyramidal shape or triangular, and you can see that it is embedded in the perineal fat, right? This half moon shaped adrenal gland is being covered on its outer side by the dense irregular connective tissue capsule, and it is supposed to give septa inside, right? And you know what is the purpose of septa? That is going to enter into the parenchyma as a stromal framework, and it gives passage for neurovascular bundle, right? Stroma is basically filled with the reticular fibers, and we see that there are a lot of microvasculature that is supposed to enter your adrenal gland. And if you concentrate on this adrenal gland, it has got an outer cortex which is yellowish in color and a reddish central adrenal medulla, right? Now a little bit about the embryological origin of the adrenal gland. As it has got two portions, we discussed the cortex and the medulla. So they behave as a single organ but of different embryological origin. In the picture, if you can concentrate that the cortex is being formed or originated from the mesodermal tissue, right? And the adrenal medullary cells or sympathetic ganglion you would be observing are taking origin from the neuric crest, right? And they both are fusing to form the single adrenal gland. And you can very well imagine that how the cortex in the fetus is gonna form and is being replaced later on by the permanent adrenal cortex, right? Now the blood supply. Let's see, the superior, the middle and the inferior suprarenal arteries are gonna supply in the capsule of the adrenal gland and give rise to three principal patterns of blood distribution. Let's see in the now focus on the picture, the capsular artery, hence the capsular capillaries. They are going to supply the capsule, and then we observe there is a fenestrated cortical sinusoidal capillaries. They are joining to form adrenocortical sinusoids and finally forming the adrenomedullary collecting veins. They are becoming larger and larger, and they will join to form the superior, middle, inferior suprarenal veins, and hence being drained on right side in the inferior vena cava, and left side they are joining the left renal vein, right? And they are having inside the longitudinally running bundles of smooth muscles. What is going to happen when these muscles contract? They decreases the volume of your adrenal gland and enhance the efflux of the hormone being produced by them into the circulation. And we can compare this action with that of squeezing a wet sponge. Right? Now concentrate that there lies the medullary arteriole that is traversing the cortex and the trabeculae to reach into the medullary region to form medullary capillaries. So in this way we can learn that your medulla is receiving its dual blood supply, right? And finally they are merging into the medullary veins. Now concentrate on the cut section. You can see on its outer side the capsule, and next to it you can observe the adrenal cortex, and then you can find the adrenal medulla here, right? Now we will see its a large view, right? This one. Here lies the capsule first. Then you can see the cortex that is being divided into three concentric layers. The superficial among them is the zona glomerulosa, right? That forms almost 50% of the cortex. Next to it, you find the zona fasciculata that makes 65 to 80% of that cortex. Then you can observe the zona reticularis that makes 5 to 10% in its ratio, right? Now we have to learn what cells are there and what their characteristic feature seen as an ultrastructure. Right? Now in this picture you can see the ultrastructure of adrenocyte or the steroid secreting cells present in your adrenal cortex. Here lies the two adjacent cells of the adrenal cortex, say zona fasciculata. They are well laden with the lysosomes. They are having spherical mitochondria having tubular cristae, and they have showing the profuse smooth endoplasmic reticulum. And both these mitochondria and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, both of their collaboration, what they have to do? They have to produce the synthesis of, you would say, the steroidal hormone. What they do? They have certain enzymes for the conversion of cholesterol into the pregnenolone, and this is the step to be taken in the steroidal synthesis, right? Now in this histological section, just below the capsule, you are looking into the zona glomerulosa. Here what is happening, that the cells are closely packed and they are appearing as rounded or arch cords of the columnar or pyramidal cells, right? And intervening capillaries could be a part of it. If you can see that these are the capillaries adjacent to them, and what their secretion is, that they have to produce the mineralocorticoid. Predominantly aldosterone is there, right? Now what aldosterone has to do? It uptake sodium and potassium, right? And in this way it regulates your salt balance, right? And we expect that the sodium resorption occurs through distal convoluted tubules of the kidneys, and the stimulation for the aldosterone are through three things: predominantly via angiotensin 2 and also by the increased plasma concentration of that potassium ions, right? And can be affected weakly by the ACTH, right? And here the lipid content is not that much, which we find in the cells of zona fasciculata, right? Now concentrate, we are in the next layer, that is zona fasciculata, and it is showing the long vertical running cords of large polyhedral cells which are 1 to 2 cell thick, and they are separated with the fenestrated vertically running sinusoidal capillaries, and these cells are well filled with the lipid droplets and sometimes appear vacuolated when we give the histological stain to them, and they are supposed to secrete what? The glucocorticoids, especially the cortisol, and here they have to deal with the carbohydrate metabolism, you would say, and this is what, that they have to deal with the glucose, right? And what else we expect? The glucocorticoids basically affect by stimulating the production of glucose from the amino acid, you would say, or fatty acid, and convert it into glycogen through gluconeogenesis, right? And for this we will discuss the feedback mechanism through a picture, right? First, now concentrate on the third or innermost layer. If I can mark it, this is the zona reticularis, that is 10% of your cortex rather, and they are having the smaller cells and forming irregular anastomosing cord, and they are separated by the wide capillaries, you can see, and but here you can see that they are well stained because they are not much filled with the lipid droplets, you would say, or lipid content, and what they carry in excessive amount, the more lipofucsin pigment that gives the color, right? And they have to produce weak androgens, and which includes the dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA, right? That is supposed to be converted to testosterone, so means sex hormones is supposed to be produced in men and women both, and the secretion is again stimulated via ACTH with the regulatory feedback mechanism that involves your pituitary and hypothalamus, right? Now if you concentrate the innermost area, let me mark it, this is the adrenal medulla, right? And here there are large pale staining polyhedral cells, and they are again arranged in an anastomosing cord and separated by the capillaries. What they are? These cells are like few parasympathetic ganglionic cells, right? And they are called as chromaffin cells arising from the neural crest cells, and they can be called as modified sympathetic postganglionic neurons whose large axons or dendrites are not found, right? So they appear as a specialized secretory cells. What they have to produce? They secrete epinephrine or norepinephrine, right? Here the granules which are supposed to produce epinephrine are basically less electron dense and smaller than that of the non-epinephrine secreting cells, right? And we observe them in a complex packed with the protein chromogranin, and they have got affinity for the chromaffin salt, you would say, and appear like so, and giving the name to these cells, right? And they are being innervated by the cholinergic endings of the preganglionic sympathetic neurons. And what else? That these are the hormones which are being released in your blood whenever there is intense emotional states such as fright and flight fright, you would say, to produce vasoconstriction leading to your increased blood pressure that leads to change in your heart rate, elevated blood glucose level as well, right? Then there is another picture that is schematically showing you that the three parts of the cortex and the medulla, what they are going to produce. The zona glomerulosa, you can see in the picture, is going to form the mineralocorticoid, you can see in the blue ball, right? Then you can concentrate that the zona fasciculata, and they are supposed to form the glucocorticoids, the cortisol and cortisone, right? And then you can concentrate the innermost zona reticularis is supposed to produce androgens, the estrogen and testosterone predominantly, right? And your medulla is supposed to produce the catecholamines, the epinephrine, non-epinephrine, or adrenaline or non-adrenaline, right? And the peptides, you call them as somatostatin and substance P, right? Now in this picture you can see the periphery is the cortex and the middle portion is the adrenal medulla. Now we have to concentrate that the three layers of the cortex are supposed to deal with what? The outer zona glomerulosa is supposed to deal with your salt, right? And the zona fasciculata is to deal with your sugar. And the zona reticularis is to deal the sex hormones of the body, right? In this histological picture, you can see the zona fasciculata as a vertical running columns, then the zona reticularis, a little bit darker stain, and then the central medulla, and the very center is addressing the central adrenomedullary vein, right? You can see the smooth muscle lining this vein to give it a spongy wrenching to be causing its flux of hormones, right, on its contraction. Now in this diagram, you can see the capsule, the zona glomerulosa, fasciculata and reticularis. You can mark the abbreviation GFR. Then you can see the medulla laden with the chromaffin and medullary cells, right? Now here on the left side, you can see various cells of these three different zones of the cortex, and then comes the medulla and the secretion they are gonna produce, right? Now concentrate the feedback mechanism that involves your hypothalamus that produces corticotropin releasing hormone that affects on the pituitary to secrete ACTH, and it is gonna help to stimulate the adrenal cortex, and it produces cortisol, and through the negative feedback mechanism the both pituitary and hypothalamus are being informed to secrete their content accordingly, right? Now again in this picture you can see the hypothalamus, and through it you can see the gonadotropin releasing hormone that is gonna acted upon the pituitary, and you can see the cortisol and testosterone, and they are supposed to be involving the secretion of ACTH that will stimulate the adrenals, and LH that will stimulate the testes, and both are supposed to produce adrenal androgen and testosterone respectively, and involves to act upon the prostate glands. In this how the target organs are stimulated through these endocrinal organs, right? Another very good picture, you can see the stressor or stress is causing a positive stimulatory effect on hypothalamus and causes its secretion and leading to stimulation of the pituitary to cause ACTH to be acted upon the adrenals, and the cortisol in the blood will inhibit your hypothalamus again, right? Okay, now last but not the least, the renal angiotensin aldosterone system that is giving feedback control to the zona glomerulosa. In this picture, you can see the BP is falling, and what is going to happen that the JG cells in the kidneys is they are involved in renin release. Why? Whenever there is a decrease in blood pressure, as you can see, and if there is low sodium level, and what is going to happen that the angiotensinogen is converted into angiotensin 1, and through ACE enzymes it is being converted in the circulation of via lung the angiotensin 2 that is going to act upon the adrenals to produce aldosterone. And what is going to happen that aldosterone is a potent, I would say, along with this angiotensin 2 is a potent vasoconstrictor, and they are supposed to conserve sodium along with the water, and your blood pressure raises to normal. This is how the things work in your body, and our BP, sodium concentration, blood volume, they are supposed to get increased in response to aldosterone, and finally our body works in a healthy way, right? And now the slide we have to concentrate in our lab, you can see from the superior aspect that let me mark, this is the zona glomerulosa. Then you can see the vertical running these columns, these are zona fasciculata. Then you can find the zona reticularis, and finally the medulla is showing the medullary cells or chromaffin cells, right?